Good morning, viewers. Thank you very much. Welcome to Matsanga's Global Trends. This program and this show is brought to you from Dr. David Matsanga, or brought to you from London with the compliments of Dr. David Matsanga, all the way from the capital city of the United Kingdom. This morning, we shall be doing a few things before we come to the main topic of the show. The show today, we are looking at African country, an African country that has got ups and downs. It has got famine, war, ravaged by armed struggle, and that is the Republic of Chad. Its capital is Jamena. Several of their rulers have fallen into the same trap. The president of Chad was assassinated, killed by an unknown gunman or known people who were rebels that were trained in Libya. And this gentleman is no more. His son took over power. But that is for the next. Good morning. That is coming next. Don't take away the remote. Stick with the remote. On YouTube, you can see us on YouTube. You can see us on Instagram. You can see us on TikTok. You can see us on Facebook. You can now see us on Twitter also, those in America. And you can get a replay of this show. Ours is to educate the African continent and discover what ails Africa, what kills Africa, what makes the globe a place not worth to be. Is Africa already in hell? Are we in hell? When you look at the climate change discussions, you just say, my God, we're in hell already. So thank you very much, viewers. Thank you, my panel. Thank you very much. Let me go to Nairobi, the Republic of Kenya, in Nairobi General Headquarters. Good morning, Pambe.
Good morning, Dr. Matsanga, David from the London headquarters, and the Tarwish Ole Sesina from Narok. Thank you so much for listening to us and also viewing us wherever you are, dear viewer. And we are going directly to the newspaper review this morning. I'll start with Daily Nation, where the main headline is, place junior high in primary, say parents. Parents are suggesting that the junior high school should be in primary so that the transition can be smooth. Tender age of learners and congestion cited in presentations to team collecting views. And also we have a story on page 10 of Daily Nation where the security, rather interior and coordination of national government Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki says, we are coming for you. He warns gangs amid outcry and of course unprecedented merciless response to counter criminals as the government responds to public outcry over a wave of crime gripping Nairobi and other parts of the country. The story is on page 10. And there's also an analysis on Daily Nation where an analysis of the Daily Nation presentations made at various venues before the Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms, indicating that the place of junior secondary school is a major bone of contention.
You'll give us more details later.
Appears, there is it. And of course, as we just
go through the headlines,
we have the headline on the Standard newspaper. Criminals run riot as security chiefs talk tough. Security bosses held press conferences promising a major crackdown on magas and bandits at a time Kenyans have been forced to take drastic measures to keep themselves safe. That is on page 6 of the Standard newspaper. On the Star newspaper, painful tales of slum dwellers living with HIV. In one case, mother wife pounds ARVs and puts them in husband's food. That is on page 4 to 5. For those who have also statistics where 5.2% persons living with HIV are in Nairobi. Then we have 14,446 new annual infections and 67,446 total Nairobians with HIV. Okay, as we move on, also we have a Daily newspaper from Tanzania, where cabinet orders thorough probe. These are on a plane crash that happened where 19 people were on board of the airplane, and they actually died while on board. So we had the Daily Monitor, a newspaper from Uganda, where Catholic Church tables 10 education reforms. And the Catholic Church in Uganda wants government to increase both capitation grants and research funding and make Christian religious education CRE compulsory in church-founded schools, among other demands. That is on page 4 of Daily Monitor. Okay, as we sum up on the newspaper review, we go to Namibian, where presidency fails to comply with the procurement law. There's a story on page 2 of the Namibian newspaper. And then we have the New Vision from Uganda, where 4 get titles in Mabira Forest. There's a story on page 3 of the New Vision from Uganda, where NFA battles to save 177 acres of the critical ecosystem. Then you have the Herald from South Africa. Girl, aged 12, survived 3-day rape hell. A story is found on page 22 of the Herald newspaper. Moving on, we go to the Daily News from Egypt, where COP27, where President urges intensifying efforts to mitigate climate change impact, where actually this is a COP27 that has been happening in Egypt about climate change, and whereby the heads of states who are there meeting to mitigate on how to look at that issue on climate change and disaster management. Then you have the Citizen from Uganda or from Tanzania, where government probes 8 billion shillings gold haul impounded in India. The Tanzania Minerals Commission said yesterday it was investigating reports that the authorities in India had seized 53 kilograms of gold valued at about $3.47 million, said to have originated in Tanzania. The story is on page 2 of the Citizen newspaper. Thank you so much, Dr. Matsanga. You can take over for the London newspapers.
Thank you very much. First, before we go to the London newspapers, the Zimbabwe Daily News, Mozora happy to meet Chamisa. There is a peace process going on in Zimbabwe. On the peace process handshake, maybe we never know. 2, the Newsday of Zimbabwe, Zim Commonwealth readmission uncertain. Zimbabwe must forget about readmission in the Commonwealth. Then we move on to the Punch, our sister Punch newspaper in Nigeria. It talks about, let me see what the Punch said. The Punch newspaper, Soludo attacks Obi again, says ex-governor cannot win. You know the elections in Nigeria are taking part, a serious competition between the two men, Oti and Abubakar. There is quite a lot of competition, tension, money being thrown out in Nigeria in the forthcoming elections on 2023. So we sit to watch as to whether 100 million Nigerians will go to polls and vote the leader they want. Remember, Nigeria has got difficulties. Nigeria has got a broken down system. Nigeria has got several other things, no electricity, in some parts of the world, terrorism is on the high in Maiduguri area in the north. One of the candidates, Atiku, was almost killed in Maiduguri by terrorists of Boko Haram. Thank you very much, Africa. This is Matsanga, Global Trends. Let's come to the British and the European newspapers. They speak of so many things. The headline, the Daily Express in London says, Richie gets pensioners at forefront of my mind. The Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister of Britain, is looking at everybody. It looks everybody in the world is positioning at the pensioners. And either they are taking the pensioners fund or they are looking at the pensioners as a priority. when he goes to raid which fund can be used in sustaining the economic meltdown that we talked about. We were the first people here to call people on this program about the economic meltdown. The Daily Mail of London says NASA is paying the price of migrant crisis, which takes place. As you are aware, in Britain now, the topic is about immigration, migrants, people crossing over the Mediterranean Sea. Yesterday, we saw how Libya was very instrumental in making sure that people don't cross over to Mediterranean Sea. But right now, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of Africans trying to cross who die in Mediterranean Sea on a daily basis. The Guardian of the United Kingdom said the Tory Council warned Sunak on stark risk of bankruptcy. Things in Britain here are not very good as you might think. Things are going in a wrong direction, and we hope the G20 will put up a package that can help everybody in the world. As you are aware, there is a meeting of the G20 in Bali, Indonesia, where people have been meeting, all heads of state of the big powers, the G20, including Russia, which is not represented by Putin, but by the foreign minister. The Metro, it shows the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, in person in the town that was recaptured from the Russians. Is this war going to end? Sealed with a kiss? Yes, Q, and that is what we are on the Metro. The Mirror, which is one of those papers, sensational papers, acts the triple lock, and the people will die. There's a problem with the medical situation in Britain. Not that people are sick, but people are crowded in hospitals. They don't have anywhere to go. They don't have those who have been discharged. The homes are full. The Home Secretary, the Health Secretary, the Chancellor of the Exchequer must work out a policy that will remove NHS from the backlog it has. The Sun newspaper in London said, why I blanked Gary Neville. This is something that those who are followers of Manchester United, I am not a follower, and I believe Pandey is a follower. I am, unfortunately, I am not. My team is Liverpool, and I believe in Liverpool across the African continent. You better know, for 46 years, I've been a fan of Liverpool club. When we lose, we go humbly. When we win, we go humbly. We always walk with somebody. We don't walk alone. Back to you in the studios in Nairobi. What is the topic of the day? And a good morning, Kitawiki from Narok.
Good morning to you, Dr. David Matsanga. Good morning also to Mpambe from our main headquarters. Good morning also to our viewers who are watching our program here in Kenya, Africa, and indeed the rest of the world. It is always my pleasure to join you on Matsanga Global Trends, Dr. Matsanga, and ready to discuss the topic before us, that is regarding Chad. Thank you, Doctor.
Bring it out, Chad, the transition. But before we do that, and we call Pandey, because I will take you through his what he has on the ground. Last night we had a great Twitter space of why Africa. Are we the enemy of ourselves? Are we enemies of ourselves? It has generated a great debate. It went on up to about 4 a.m. And as you see, most of us here, 4 a.m. of your East African time. And this was very important debate. Africans came out to speak their minds, why they have failed, why their governments, all this from Morocco, from Egypt, from Zimbabwe, from South Africa. It is a very good, very interesting. If we interact like that, the anger goes out, and therefore we become good citizens. by keeping quiet, Tawish, we can be very dangerous. So it's better to talk and vomit your anger in such platforms. I'm sorry you came in. I tried to bring you as a co-host, but I think your equipment just refused, and it affected my equipment. I had to give it a booster through another situation. Thank you very much. The topic today is Chad. And before Pambe comes in with facts, let me give an overview. And it can be taken as a takeaway. Chad is a country at the strip of Sahara Desert. Chad is a very important and very significant crossing point from the west to the Red Sea. But this country, Chad, has never had any peace since its independence from the French, as you will see the results from the readings and notes. I usually don't use notes, but I have my notes in my head. Chad has never had any type of peace from Hissène Habré, Idriss Déby, now the sons. Chad has always been in turmoil. It has produced conflict upon conflict. It has joined conflicts upon conflicts. It has sent troops into areas where conflicts have taken place. And remember, Chad is one of the neighbors also of the Democratic Republic of Congo. It plays a very pivotal role in destabilizing and being a conduit of so many activities that take part in the Central African Republic and in the North African zone. As you are aware, Chad also played a very pivotal role when Libya was on fire and when Gaddafi was about to collapse. It was very important for the people who wanted to dismember Libya to use Chad as a base also to dismember the country, which we know today lies in the ruins. But what can we do as Africans? What can we bring on the table that can stabilize Chad? A few weeks ago, there was a peace process in Doha, brokered by the government of Qatar and the African Union. And the most important and significant point to note here is Chad produces the Secretary General or the chairperson of African Union, Dr. Mohamed Faki, who was a Minister of Foreign Affairs before ascending to power in the African Union. But Dr. Mohamed Faki has not told us everything, the truth, and nothing but the truth about Chad. There are so many activities, illegal activities. For example, the killing of President Idriss Déby, assassination of the man who had just won an election, and the succession politics that took place from Idriss Déby to the son of Idriss Déby, the current leader of Chad, has been kept in a mystery. Is that mystery the one that is going to unravel the transition? If that is the case, let's look at the facts on the ground. And let's get our brother in Nairobi to give us the facts. And from those facts, we can discuss, is Chad in a transition? Will it happen? Or another military coup will come and take over before it happens? Take it away.
Yes, indeed, Dr. Matsanga, as we have just confirmed there that there has been a transitional military council on dozens of rival factions signing a peace deal aimed at ending decades of conflict. The agreement was the first step towards democratic elections and a new constitution. Many political factions signed the deal, But Chad's largest armed group walked out of negotiations when its demands were not met. More than 20 Chadian rebel groups later suspended their participation in negotiations that took place in Doha, Qatar, as you confirmed earlier, accusing the Chad's military government of destabilizing peace efforts. Their decision in July this year came a few hours after interim President Mohamed Idris Deby decided to set the date of the dialogue for August 20th, a move that angered the rebels who accused the government of trying to exclude them from the event. On 20th October this year, Chadian security forces killed more than 50 protesters on the streets of Chad's capital N'Djamena and other cities and towns. Demonstrators had taken to the streets in anger at an extension of the country's transitional period that allows President Mohamed Deby to hold power for another 2 years and then possibly contest elections despite his previous pledges to stand down. Former leader Deby ruled with an iron fist for nearly 30 years. He died during a visit to the battlefield where Chadian soldiers fought against a rebel group that had crossed into Sudan from Libya. Initially, Mohamed Deby seemed to mark a break from the past. A space for political debate opened up. Some exiled opposition leaders returned to Chad, and talks with rebels got underway. Over the past few months, though, the most powerful rebel groups have rejected the deal that emerged from those talks, and when a national dialogue started in N'Djamena, the main opposition party and civil society organizations chose not to participate. So in this case, they came the announcement that junta members, including Deby, could not run for elections, which triggered protests and the crackdown that I've just talked about, where the security forces killed more than 50 protesters on the streets of Chad's capital in N'Djamena. That is part of the story that is going on in this peaceful transition. And we ask a question, will peaceful transition happen in Chad? That's a question for all of us here in the panel. Thank you so much, Dr. Matsanga.
Thank you very much, Pambe Wapambe from Nairobi General Headquarters. Dawish, will the transition take place? Looking at the events, you have seen the chronological events. A president of an African country assassinated. We know who the rebels are. One of the problems that I find with African politics, and which we must practice and talk and call out, is the question of knowing the truth, but not talking about the truth. The late president of Chad was assassinated by the group that is being trained in South Libya. Who trains this group? Egypt. Trained by Egypt under the command of General Khalifa Haftar. General Khalifa Haftar group has been recruiting a lot of recruits from Chad and from the tribes of southern parts, first aimed to help him to strengthen his position in Benghazi and to help him to overthrow the government of Chad and install a puppet government. The Egyptians on the other side have also been equipping the same rebels and are giving them a way forward, ammunition, fallback positions. President Tshisekedi has been mandated to go to Chad to resolve the problem by the Organization of Central African Organizations, as if he has no problems at his own home, Tawish. Looking at all this, the mess, the failure to discuss, the failure to talk out, the failure to call. If you look at the conflicts that we have in Africa, all these conflicts come because we don't call out the names of those who fund the rebel groups. We don't call them by the names. I was very happy yesterday on the platform, somebody called out the names and brought the truth. You can't have cotton. You can't have shirts of cotton made in your place when you don't grow cotton. And that is the point. We have never called out Egypt. We have never called out General Khalifa Haftar. We have made a mess as African Union. We've made a mess. The African Union. You see, leaders should not tell us that they are the owners of African Union. African Union is owned by you people because you pay your tax to sustain that building that was built by Chinese, where we have a Secretary General, the chairperson of that organization, being a master of deceit and an employee of the French government. Why hasn't France talked about the killing of Idriss Adabe? Why did we allow rebel groups walk in the capital, kill the president, go away, install the son, and then we keep quiet and then we move on? How long will Africa hold Tawish from Narok?
Thank you so much, Dr. And just like you rightly put it, indeed Africa doesn't cease to amaze me. You just mentioned the case of President of Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, being tasked to oversee the peace transition or to try and find a solution to the problem in Chad. Whilst his home country, that is DR Congo, is actually up in ashes. I mean, the rebel groups, the M23 rebels, are completely causing mayhem and havoc in most parts of DR Congo, especially in Kivu region. And Dr. Matsanga, just a couple of days ago, also we are asking ourselves why the world really chose to have the COP27 summit being held in Egypt at a time when we all know that Egypt has not been very, very well in terms of the issues to do with peace, security in this part of the continent. But that is the irony that is African continent. That is the irony that is our leaders, that the most unlikely of the people or nations are the ones who get the opportunity. Just the other day also when we are having, was it the Africa Cup of Nations being held in Cameroon, in Yaoundé, Dr. Matsanga. And I remember with all the atrocities in Cameroon happening, how we could end up having this, of course, very, very monumental tournament being held in that part of the continent. But that aside, Dr. Matsanga, the question is as to whether Chad will ever see a peaceful transition. Dr. Matsanga, this might come to pass really. It might happen. I am very optimistic, but the question is when. And there are so many obstacles and challenges in the way for Chad to have a peaceful transition because one, there is a lot of competing interest, not only being perpetuated by the locals or the leadership in Chad, but because also of the external foreign hand that is controlling the affairs in Chad. You've triggered our memories about how President Idriss Deby Sr. Was actually assassinated, and how the son, the now President Idriss Deby, was actually put into power after the assassination of his father. And I mean, all accusations and fingers are being pointing at France. Hegemony are pointing at France involvement and hand in as far as what is happening in Chad today is concerned. So essentially, Dr. Matsanga, this will remain a pipe dream in as far as Chad politics is concerned as to whether we're going to have a peaceful transition anytime soon. Because again, look at the opposition itself. They are disintegrated. They are pointing fingers. They are blaming one another. There seems not to be a proper focus and a unity of purpose coming from the leadership of that region. I'm not quite sure if this is something that is self-inflicted by the Chadians themselves, or is it because of the external hand that is making it difficult for the Chadian people and Chadian leaders really to unite and forge a common purpose and make sure you have a peaceful transition. Because by the end of the day, that is what is in the best interest of the people of Chad. Remember also our leaders, Idriss Deby II, who came into power, really had promised that we are going to have a peaceful transition in less than 2 years, after he got into office. But again, that we did not see that happen. He had even promised not to have himself really on the ballot during election. So we are also reneging on some of the pledges and promises we make to our people. One, when we are asking for positions of power, but second, also once we get this opportunity, we completely forget the kind of promises and pledges we make to the people. This remains it remains fresh in the minds of the populace, and they will continually be haunted by that very fact that our leaders do not live by the pledges and promises they make to their people. So it is going to be a long pipe dream, Dr. Matsanga, for Chad to have a peaceful transition. Because again, when you look into the military themselves, everybody seems to be pulling on their own in a different direction. Even the current prime minister, who has been appointed to oversee this peaceful transition, the people on the other side of the political divide appear not to have any trust, confidence, and faith in him to oversee a peaceful transition. So we are going to be embroiled in this fiasco and in this misgiving in as far as our leaders is concerned for the longest of time. And I'm not very sure that if there's not going to be so much intervention and seriousness coming from the leadership of the continent, that Chad by itself or herself will be able to really oversee and have a peaceful transition. We are going to have coups after coups. We are going to have a democratic change of regimes in Chad, and that is one of the least things really we would want to see happening in that part of the continent. So, Dr. Matsanga, in as much as we remain optimistic, there still remain so much obstacles and hurdles in the journey of Chad seeing a peaceful transition. For now, Dr. I submit.
Back to Pambe.
All right.
You have seen demonstrators, protesters. The standard of living the cost of living is so high. What do you think is going to happen? Because the other rebel groups, and you can see while these groups were going to Doha, the main group that was in training in South Libya, supported by Egypt, decided not to go to Doha at all. And it is the main force that even killed the other president. So when for us, we sit here and we go to AU, we talk about AU, we glorify this guy, Muhammad Faki, tell him he's a very good diplomat because he's tall and with gray hair. We are not doing any good service to the African Union. Do you think there is someone in the African Union who is screwing this process?
And of course there might be, because this is where now the issue of what we are experiencing, there's no significant stability that we might experience at the end of the day, because the conflict in the region has been largely driven by most of the leaders there, rather the groups that should be looking at the peace process. Most of them are again acting backdoor. Some of them, as we said earlier on, rather as we have been discussing, this is the problem that has been facing Africa, especially when it comes to peace process. You find that even after the members of a certain group comes up to express their interest in solving an issue, there are some who come later on just to worsen the situation. And this might also bring the coup, because Chad has experienced around 7 coups since its establishment, rather since independence. So we might experience another coup, perhaps the 8th coup in Chad. And as we add on the coups that were, of course, being regular in occurrence in Africa. In the decades that independence, that there's a concern, they're starting to become more frequent as earlier on. So even as we talk about this year has seen 2 takeovers in Burkina Faso. This might not be a new thing in Chad rather. And we have also seen overall number of coup attempts in Africa remaining remarkably consistent at an average of around 4 a year in the 4 decades between 1960 and the year 2000. This is being brought about by external forces, and we might not really be having leaders who are interested in bringing about peace, because looking at the demonstrations that are taking place. When demonstrations take place and in the streets, and you find that there are some forces who are killing more than 50 protesters, this is something to question, because it means that none of the people here might be interested in bringing peace about. And of course, over the past few months there, as we have seen, most powerful rebel groups have rejected the deal that emerged from those talks. And when national dialogue started in this capital, N'Djamena, the main opposition party and civil society organizations chose not to participate. So there is also a rise in rebel groups coming up, apart from the rival factions that we are seeing here. Those transitional government like military council coming up, but still the rival factions are making the peace, rather thwarting the peace process happening in Chad. So it is very, very important for these leaders to, first of all, express interest in this particular process, and thereafter also at least ensure that we keep away those external forces that might be coming up. And in this case, African Union must rise up to the occasion, because it has been, we have been complaining about this most of the time. It has been at the forefront of talking about peace, but again, when it comes to practicality, it has been so difficult. So African leaders must rise up to the occasion, as you said earlier. We cannot have leaders who are in the office, rather a bigger office that was built by the money for Africa, but they're not doing anything to solve the conflicts and also ensure that Africans live in peace. Africans at least enjoy living in their continent peacefully. Thank you, Dr. Matsanga.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
For the sentiments for Africa to live peacefully, you need anybody reading the book of Chinua Achebe, The Anthills of Savannah. What do you find? What do you see? What role do you see in that book, The Anthills of the Savannah? Chinua Achebe predicted bad governance. Chinua Achebe predicted the mess. Chinua Achebe predicted the Boko Haram. Chinua Achebe predicted the Sahel, the drought, the anthills of Savannah. If you want to understand the African politics and the Chad politics, just read that book. Any student, anybody listening to me, all over Africa, read the book and see. You will find that the anthills of the Savannah is what Chinua Achebe referred to as bad governance, bad economy, bad social life, bad habits, could lead to corruption, could lead to quite a lot of difficulties. Indeed, to sum up, Chinua Achebe's antihill, the antihill of the Savannahs, the book that he wrote, a very wonderful book that I'm summarizing for you from my head, and give me a credit for that, because I read those literature in 1974, but I'm still remembering. Look at that, my brother Pambe and my brother Tawish. The antihills of the Savannah is exactly the antihill of N'Djamena. Where we are in N'Djamena, where we are in Egypt, where we are in Ethiopia, where we are in Asmara, Eritrea, where we are in Libya, where we are in Burkina Faso, where we are in Mali, where we are in Nigeria, where we are in Cote d'Ivoire, where we are in Western Sahara, where we are in Central African Republic. These are the antihills of the Savannah. If I'm wrong, cut off one hand. The antihills of Savannah, you can see it. Mr. Chinua Achebe, in writing his book, was simply telling you that, be careful, the ants will come and bite you. But who bites you are the French. We still have problems on our own fingertips. When the French come out to support factions, money collected from Chad, And there is one thing, Tawish, which we must bring out. Most of the countries that are discovering oil, someone is preparing a conflict for them. If I'm wrong again, cut one finger. Look at our oil in Uganda. It is ours. But someone is telling President Museveni that you are not going to dig the pipe. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that one. Look at that. My brother, why can't you be happy? This morning I was reading Matthew. And I don't know, Tawish, you are one of those who looks at my readings. I read the book of Matthew and discovered that at times I have been a warden. I have been a warden, an assistant warden for Lady Mary's Church in Croydon for 33 years. For the 33 years, I have been there. If you read Matthew chapter 7, verse 15 to 20, Chinua Achebe was telling you the anthills of the savannah. The Bible tells you that be aware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are not ravenous wolves. Am I not going to become a priest, Mr.? Be aware. And that is Chinua Achebe told you. Be aware of the anthills of the savannah, the bad governance of the savannah, the bad economic upheaval, our oil, the oil in Jamaica, the oil in Chad, the discovery of oil in Chad, the discovery of oil in platinum in Mali, the discovery of platinum in Burkina Faso, the discovery of other minerals, the dam in Ethiopia. This fight is a proxy war. We are fighting a proxy war. And Matthew chapter 7, verse 15 to 20. You go further to read. You will know them by their fruits. Who are those? The French. You know them by their fruits. When they come around with their company Total Oil, run very fast, Murife. Run, Murife. Because you are going to go down. Hallelujah. You are going to go down. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Hello? Pastor Matsanga. I wrote this morning to my Christian fellowship at the Anglican Church of Lady Mary in Surrey, where I've been an assistant warden for 33 years. I wrote today, and I said, be careful. They are coming in all formats. The ant-hill of the savannah has come with all the format that you want. It has come with promises of oil, of roads. It has come with promises of this, that. Where is the money? We cut trees. Nigeria has floods. If you look at the amount of timber exported from Port Harcourt out of Nigeria and Lagos, of timber cut from the vast land of Nigeria, the forest, the tropical forest that God created to stop the desert from coming down. What politics are you talking about? Chad is the antehill of Savannah. Now Achebe told you that be careful. They will come and tell you, we are able to give you the roads. A good tree does not bear a bad fruit. Nor can a bad tree bear a good fruit. Am I preaching this morning? It has turned into a sermon. Hallelujah. Because at times maybe God talks through me. 6-7 years ago, I predicted there will be a proxy war in East Africa. Tawish, confess. In 2016, when we opened this television station, what was I telling you?
Indeed, you predicted, Dr. Matsanga,
that there is a proxy war in the region of Great Lakes region. I predicted is a vision, is understanding of the situation of Africa. I'm not PLO Lumumba. I'm a realist. I saw the war coming. I saw it. The machinations of the French Total Oil was going to create a war in this big region. And that war is still hovering over this whole region. Hallelujah. God help me. I saw it. And if people think that I did not say, then it is up to you. It's your mistake. But I, Dr. David Matsanga, I saw the war. Proxy war. The proxy war on Chad that we see today, planted, supported, equipped, supplied by Mahamat Faki of the African Union against his own state in order for him to become the president of Chad is what kills Chad. I landed the mic to Tawish. Hello?
Yes, indeed, Dr. And it's good that you've given us at least a bite of the word,
yes,
which is also very encouraging. You know, sometimes on these programs, we don't need to only but have very stiff topics and very stiff faces discussing issues to do with politics of the region. But Dr. Matsanga, away from that, I think we really need a very serious and urgent intervention in as far as the situation in Chad is concerned. Because again, we do not have to wait until more people have lost their lives. That's when we now rise up from slumber to begin to put the interventions and see how we can really find solutions to these problems. I think what is happening in Chad today must really trigger Africans of the leaders of Africans of goodwill to move in swiftly and see what can be done to try and salvage that nation of the African continent, Dr. Matsanga. But away from that, Dr. I think for us to be able to really find the root cause of this problem and even make some breakthrough in as far as really finding solution and uniting the civilian population, especially those who are protesting and demonstrating against what they perceive as the domination of the military rule or the continued domination of the Derby regime. We have to deal with the issue of disarmament, total disarmament, the issue of demobilization, and the issue of reintegration, because the people appear to be reading from different scripts altogether. The ordinary civilians themselves do not agree. The civilians and the military do not agree. The leaders themselves also do not agree. And there's continued, of course, disruption of activities and the causing of chaos in Chad. So the only way forward is to make sure that we carry out a very serious and urgent disarmament, make sure that we demobilize all the people who are now actively involving themselves in this particular confrontation, but more importantly, see into it how we can be able to reintegrate all these groups to come together and find a common purpose. Because by the end of the day, they have no any other country to call home. They will still have to be in Chad. They will still have to call Chad their home. And if they have and appreciate and acknowledge that fact, Dr. Matsanga, they can be able to put any other interest aside for the better and the greater interest of the people of Chad. I think when we do that and we make such kind of sacrifices, by the end of the day, you will see that there's some progress that will be registered in having a peaceful transition in Chad. The biggest problem also, Dr. Matsanga, which has become now synonymous with every African country today, corruption, which is now the jigger in the toes or in the toe of every African nation, where when leaders come into power, it is not about, of course, dealing with the issues that matter to the people, but advancing their very own interests. They steal from the public coffers. They continue to stifle all democracy. They continue to carry out brazen killing of innocent civilians. Dr. Matsanga, in this time and age, in this 21st century, I think it's unacceptable. We need to live respecting human dignity and giving everybody their space, really to be able to express their views openly and frankly, and without any fear of being victimized or being pressed down on. And I think that is what we are seeing in Chad today. That killing of the innocent civilians who are protesting is something that is unfortunate and called for, and it's something that all of us really must reprimand and ask that it does not occur again. We do not continue losing innocent civilians for those who are fighting for power in Chad. But by and large, Dr. Matsanga, I want to remain very, very optimistic that if we can be able to rise to the occasion, and now and not later than now, Dr. Matsanga, we may after all really find a solution to the problem and have a peaceful transition in Chad. But if we keep watching, if we stay on the periphery, if we live like Chad is an island that does not need our intervention, then we will be called upon when the situation is dire, when everything else has gotten out of hand. At that point, it will be very, very difficult and very late to salvage the situation. Dr. Hari, I submit.
Thank you very much. As you run the mic, let me come back to, as we finish our tipping, our last point, parting shots. Bande, yes. You have seen all what it is. Several rebel groups, 20 of them. Take it from there.
All right. Of course, what has been said there is actually revolving around the ongoing democratic backsliding and emerging competition among major powers that have further complicated regional dynamics, although the overall impact remains to be seen, just like in Sahel region, because Chad is part of the Sahel region, including Burkina Faso and many other countries that I had mentioned earlier, that we have experienced decades of coups. After a decade-long crisis, of course, the Sahel entered 2022 this year amid escalating disorder with levels of organized political violence increasing last year, that's 2021, compared to 2020. And as COVID-19 was ravaging Africa and the whole world, Sahel region was again battling with instability in security. Conflict in the region has been largely driven by jihadist insurgency, as we have talked about this, and this is centered in the states of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and also Chad, which are most affected by this crisis. Each of these countries are experiencing significant instability in their own way, just like in 2021 there. Spillover effects of the crisis on neighboring West African littoral states such as Ivory Coast and Benin also took on even greater proportions. Just like here in East Africa, if DRC is unstable, that will mean that even Kenya, Uganda will have a problem, and even Tanzania there. So Burkina Faso replaced Mali as the epicenter of the regional conflict. In 2021, the number of organized political violence events in Burkina Faso doubled compared to 2020, while annual reported fatalities surpassed reported fatalities in Mali for the second time in 3 years. We are talking about conflicts that are bringing very bad effects in terms of economy, in terms of social and even political affairs. As people are suffering, of course, in terms of where to stay, this is actually bringing also issues to do with displacements. where people are displaced within their countries. We have been talking about DRC, where more than 4.5 million people have been displaced within their own country. This is actually a bad effect of the war that comes up in these regions. So there was worsening violence, like in Chad there. It will be largely driven by the affiliated groups like Al-Qaeda, as we have been talking about. Look at Egypt coming in this particular issue. So where Jama al-Nusrat al-Islam wal-Muslim, that's JNIM, this is an Al-Qaeda affiliated group. Among other groups there, we saw the other day Al-Shabaab being named given another name in Somalia, just to at least to reduce the effect of that name that has actually been in the heads of many people for many years. So the group's engagement in political violence here, including attacks on both civilians and state forces, increased over 200% in 2021 compared to 2020. I'm talking about an increase in insecurity in these countries, apart from Chad, that we have been we are actually talking about by and large. So just to sum up on these, as I end on this year, it has also seen takeovers in Burkina Faso, as well as failed coup attempt in Guinea-Bissau. We saw recently Guinea-Bissau having another coup attempt, and in 2021, Africa witnessed a higher number of coups compared with the previous years. As I said earlier, as we continue to talk about Chad, as we stare on it, instead of looking at the solutions to this insecurity, solutions to what might help Chad, we might be staring at another an eighth coup in since independence, because it has experienced more than 6 coups until now. Thank you so much, Dr. Matsanga. You take over as we sum up of the topic. Yes, we seem to be the sound. I think there's an effect.
Yes.
Yes.
Tawish, as I come in with my party, your parting shot before I come in with the last words of the day. And these last words will be takeaway. Disregard the first takeaway because it was not well documented. Thank you very much, Tawish.
Absolutely, Dr. Matsanga, and I tend to concur with the submissions you've made, and that which my colleague Pambe has submitted. That for us to find a solution in Chad, for Chad to have a peaceful transition, we need all and sundry. It is not just about the military, it's not just about the civilians, it is not just about a section of the leadership. I think it is all and sundry. It's about all the leadership, it's all about the citizenry in Chad to come together and be able to find a solution to the problem in their own country. Because again, if they wait upon the importation of a solution to the problem, it might as well not be a permanent solution for that matter. And we have seen it in the past. We have seen it with various other nations in the continent of Africa, that in most instances when we tend to import solutions to the problems in our continent, we have never found a permanent solutions in the crises that we have been facing. So it is important for homegrown solutions to this problem. We all understand where the problem is, where the jigger is, and we understand even the participation and the apologies of the external forces, and in this case, France and the people of Chad, the ordinary Wananchi, are not very pleased, are not very amused by the participation and the involvement of France allegedly in funding some of these crises that we are seeing in Chad. So they should cease and let Chad really concentrate on one, getting a peaceful transition, and getting a civilian that has the faith, the trust, and confidence of the populace in Chad, and all the leadership and the military are really to forego any of their personal interests for the greater good of the people of Chad. Because by the end of the day, if we continue killing innocent civilians, if the future generation is lost by not having education, by them being killed brazenly the way we are seeing it, then we might not as well have a future generation in Chad. And that is a very, very big threat for the prosperity and for the posterity of any nation in the world, and in particular in this case now, Chad. I want to beseech the leaders and more so the military to see it fit that the agitation by the ordinary civilians in Chad rather, is a legitimate one, and it should be granted that we all are really geared towards and will be very, very happy to see a peaceful transition happening in Chad. I submit.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, those who have been watching us, this is Matsanga Global Trends. Our episode today was Chad. Chad is a country that has got 7 military coups. I have not started yet. Is that so?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. 7 military coups since independence. Is that so?
It is true.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Let's go. Viewers of Matsanga Global Trends will be very interested in knowing why most of the Africa is in turmoil. But when you read the book, The Anthills of the Savannah, by Chinua Achebe, a well-renowned writer on the African affairs, which predicted that at a certain time the anthills will come out and bite you. You will have a whole common sense that he was right. If you look at all the countries across the Sahel region, right from the west up to the east, in Eritrea, Ethiopia, all the way from Western Sahara, you come down this way, or the Sahara Desert, then you come down in the tropics, the savannah of Africa, you will find that the story of the anthills of the savannah holds. Bad governance, bad human rights, conflicts, bad economy, the corruption, blaming colonialism as a center of our problems. But surely indeed, after 66 years of independence, isn't it time for us Africa, as Africans, to sit down and review why a country like Chad, because it has discovered oil, whose leader was assassinated, killed by the people we know, and they installed the sun, why a country like this might not be getting the transition it wants. A few weeks ago, most of the rebel groups and the opposition groups landed in Doha, of course, for bed and breakfast and money for shopping and taking back home perfumes to sign what we call a peace accord for Chad. But can this peace accord hold? President Tshisekedi of Democratic Republic of Congo himself, besieged by conflict that he cannot even direct us which direction to go, was able to be appointed as a mediator. But some rebel groups, 20 of them, walked out, pushed by Egypt, UAE, and other powers that are playing for oil of Chad. Isn't it time for Africa to call out these countries? Isn't it time for us to call out each other before we come to the table peace conferences, calling ourselves people who have come to give views, wasting the time of mediators who would be doing their own other work? Isn't it time to call out the countries that actually fume, prepare, arrange these conflicts? The answer is in the book, The Anthills of Savannah. How can Africa react? How can Chad come out of the quagmire, the amnesia created by the French hegemony of installing puppet leaders for this great nation of Chad? 7 military coups, human rights record, sentencing of Hussein Babre, killing of Idris Deby, installation of the sun, and the rebels in South Libya, supported by Egypt, a superpower on the African continent. How long will Africa survive the conflicts that are supported by ourselves? If we don't call out, they'll call in. If you call in, they finish you. God bless you, and God bless Africa. Chad is under the flame of Dr. Muhammad Faki, a national of Chad himself, the current chair of the African Union, who should have supervised his country to a smooth transition, to a peaceful transition. But instead, he has taken the instructions of the masters who have taken over our African Union, and they do the things they want. May God help us. May God help African Union. Just as I read the book of Matthew chapter 7, verse 15 to 20. Can a bad tree create a good fruit? Those who come in format as wolves in a sheep's skin, shall we have the best prophets that Africa wants? Chinua Achebe was therefore right to tell us the anti-heroes of Savannah. Oh yes, the anti-heroes of Savannah are the ones paining the Sahel region, Boko Haram, drought, killings, kidnap, torture, slaughter, the wretched of the earth. May God help Africa. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr.